Hi, everyone. Welcome. If you were just joining, I'm Ramya Venkateswaran. I'm the GM for HR management here at Remote. And if you're new to Remote, we are a global HR tech company and we help teams hire, manage, and pay people. I'm so thrilled today because I'm joined by our incredible Chief People Officer, Barbara Matthews. A week ago, Barbara posted about an incredible milestone within the company. We ran a full global performance review for over 1,800 employees in 48 hours. Now, this sparked a ton of questions from leaders, founders, and operators. So we are just here to have an informal conversation today about kind of the context behind that and how we made it happen. Please feel free to drop any questions in the comments as we go along. So, Barbara, hello.
Before we both have trees, Ramya. It's like
we do. Trees and window game. Before we jump in, could I ask you to share a little bit about your background and sort of about what brought you to Remote?
Yes. So before this, I led HR for EMEA and APAC at Stripe and spent over 12 years prior to that on the people team in lots of different roles at Google. And I've been in this business about 22 years. And across the 22 years, I've helped build and scale high performing, globally distributed teams. And for me, when I saw this opportunity with Remote, I saw it as an opportunity to shape quite a global culture from the ground up. And which was the real carrot for me, was to help build the HR platform that I always wished I have had in my career. And I was so lucky to work with the product and engineering team, the first product and engineering team that have actually listened to me and gone, oh yeah, I'd actually like to work on a HR platform versus no, sorry, I'm working on something else over here. So this was possible. So that was great for me. That was a huge attraction. And then being based in Ireland, London for a while, but Ireland mostly, and not kind of the traditional SF tech hub. I was always remote and I was never at that really important water cooler conversation. So I really genuinely care about breaking down borders and enabling accessibility to work and to progress for everyone, no matter where they are in the world.
Well, we are thrilled to have you, and I'm thrilled to be able to work with you. As you know, I'm relatively new to Remote, so I've been here a little over 3.5, 4 months. So I'll confess, I don't have the full backstory on this. Can you set the stage for how performance reviews have worked historically at Remote, and sort of what was the conversation that led up to sort of this change?
Yeah, of course. And firstly, I do want to kind of set the scene and give you a bit of context on Remote and what we're trying to do here. So we're not building another Workday or another kind of standard HRIS or HR management or whatever you want to call it. We're pretty opinionated about the product that we're building, and we're deliberately not doing kind of a rinse and repeat on what you might have seen before in the industry. We're really focusing on a platform that wants to be simple. Focuses on simplicity, focuses on removing problems and eliminating complexity. So with that backdrop, when I joined in 2023, there was a lot of change happening in this organization. We really looked at how Remote worked at the time. We brought in some different values. We pivoted deliberately towards a high performance culture, which, as many people on this call will know, does take time and takes a lot of change management. We introduced new values into the organization and we really kind of shook it up as an org. And then last year, we doubled the company. So we hired 970 people, my amazing talent acquisition team, basically doubled the company. And doing that while changing a culture can be challenging. So we were changing the culture that the company had started with and grown up with for the first 4 years of their lives, and then adding over 900 people who each bring their own beautiful piece of themselves, thereby evolves the culture even more. But one thing was true, and that was that we always wanted to stay true to our values. And one of our values is around transparency. And we are a really transparent organization and we seek feedback a lot. Some might say too much, but we seek feedback a lot. So when we heard feedback, we decided to act. I had come in and conducted my own rinse and repeat performance. I was like, I've seen it at Google, I've seen it at Stripe, rinse and repeat. It works. We do it twice a year. Everyone feels a bit of pain, but it's fine. And it gets the job done in terms of performance management and calibration. But actually being the CPO and being able to work with product and engineering and build our own platform, I could work with my amazing people team to be a bit more radical, to try and kind of shake it even more and break the mold a bit. So as Remote scaled with hundreds of employees across many countries, we could see the impact of performance misalignment becoming more and more visible. We'd hired so many managers, we'd ramped them so quickly, we'd hired so many individual contributors, threw them into their roles, and people were frustrated with how long the performance management process was taking, how long it was taking to get feedback. We were doing those biannual cycles that took between 6 and 8 weeks from start to finish. And it just doesn't work at the pace that we operate today. And it just doesn't work with the culture that I and my team and the executive team kept spouting on about, which was, one of a culture of no surprises and ongoing feedback. So things just really had to change. And that was kind of the impetus and the history behind it, I guess.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me, having obviously been a part of the performance culture and reviews at many different organizations. Performance is one of those things where it's intrinsically like hard for everyone in the process, like, whether it's a manager, whether it's an employee. I don't know if it's naturally like the favorite part of anyone's days as you're thinking about performance culture and driving that change. It really matters. You talked a little bit about some of the problems with traditional performance sort of reviews. Anything else that kind of stood out to you as sort of like, here are the 3 things that we were trying to solve?
So I think for me, if I'm talking to an organization about, a culture of ongoing performance management, a culture of continuous feedback, the expectations on performance never stop. So why do we stop measuring it? Why do we only measure it like twice a year, these bulky kind of 6 to 8 week processes? We heard feedback that the reviews obviously relied on memory. People were kind of trying to remember what they did 6 months prior, and then they're getting their feedback 8 months prior to, or 8 months after they had actually given the feedback or done the thing. So it was just taking way too long. And then a key thing for me is misalignment. So I have always said my entire career, I should be able to walk the virtual floor. Now it's a virtual floor, but once upon a time it was a real floor. I should be able to walk the virtual floor and say, hey, Ramya, how are you doing? What performance rating are you trending to? Because you should know, because most problems that I encounter with employees is based on a misalignment or a lack of clarity from their managers. So in our last cycle, we had 436 employees were not aligned with their manager's rating. So we asked them to submit their self-assessment and their self-score, and then we had the managers, and there was a misalignment of 25%. That's a huge problem. And the problem was the expectations were unclear. Maybe managers didn't feel they were calibrated enough, and feedback just was not that ongoing muscle that we were flexing. The calibration meetings took too long, and it all lived across lots of different review tools, Lattice, spreadsheets, lots of tools that just weren't integrated with each other. So they're kind of the key things that we had to figure out how to change.
Yeah. Information scarce, like there's a scarcity when it comes to this kind of information around context. I think people aren't familiar acknowledging certain things for themselves, and neither do they have the right tools to sort of put that in writing to reflect later. I can guess, but I'm still going to ask you explicitly. So what was your sort of vision for Utopia or Mecca? Like if you could sort of wave a wand and kind of switch things around.
So we run AMAs like Ask Me Anything, and the exec Yob, one of our founders, does those a lot. And we were talking at the end of February, part of the AMAs, people were complaining about the length of performance management. He's like, what's the best performance manager? Like, what would be your ideal situation? And I said, oh, well, 24 hours, obviously. He's like, okay, make it happen. So obviously I can do 24 hours. That is just crazy, wild magic. So I went with 48 hours, and I was like, oh, I don't know if people will accept that. He said, you're the CPO, like make it happen. So he really empowered me, honestly. And the executive team really stood beside me to try and kind of support the whole initiative, which is, I know you're going to ask me like one of the most important things, but that is a critical piece for me. So my vision actually is to probably never have any performance processes, because it should be such an ongoing muscle that individuals are exercising with their employees. It should be such an ongoing muscle that managers are always calibrating, that leaders are always looking at kind of this curve to see where their organization is at. It shouldn't be that we have this one point in time. It almost should be ever going. But so many things need in place, and so many muscles need to be so flexed and ready to do that.
Right. And I will say that it was a really surprising and in a really good way coming into the organization 3.5 months, where I saw how much conversation there was around real-time feedback and communication around this. And we'll talk about that in a bit. So I think what's going to be interesting to a lot of folks on the call today is sort of like, what needs to be in place before you can contemplate doing this? Like 48 hours, 18-hour people, that sounds nerve-wracking. Like, how do you go about stitching the fabric, both from like a culture and communication standpoint, what do you think that your tools and systems need to support, and kind of, how do you bring everything together?
Yeah, so I didn't just mention it to my team 2 weeks before the start of July. This took, it cannot be approached lightly, this process. This is about driving a huge behavioral change and a huge change management process and creating a certain environment. So we were creating an environment where performance is truly embedded in how we work. We are using our own platform and tool to capture moments as they happen in our platform in feedback. We are looking at instant feedback. We are looking at transparent and evidence-based assessments of work that drive kind of quick decision-making, an equitable calibration approach. And essentially, I want to make it more digestible and lightweight as an approach. You know, it really is soul destroying when you're like, oh, it's calibration time. You're trying to inject some joy into it for your team who have been slogging. You're trying to inject some, you know, joy into it with your leaders and managers because you really want them to care. And you just see the life die from their eyes. Honestly, like, it is just really hard. So I want it to be digestible. I want it to be lightweight, and I wanted it to be this like ongoing thing. So we had to build this culture of continuous feedback. And I talked to you a bit about the context, like when I came in and we changed values and added to a high performance culture. To make a high performance culture successful, you have to also have this transparency, this clarity, and this continuous feedback. So we've been focusing on it for the last 18 months. So by the time the review started in July, we had flexed muscles on it. I mean, there's still a journey to go. I think we can always be improving on how we give feedback, how we receive feedback, but a lot of information was there. So before introducing the process itself, so up until kind of the end of June, we focused on the cultural change. We focused on manager enablement like months in advance. We had manager training. We had individual contributor training on the importance of feedback conversations. We had trainings that were synced, which is like in person, and then async for those who maybe who were neurodivergent or folks who don't want to necessarily be syncing all the time, or who work different hours, because we're a pretty flexible working approach. And then we have just-in-time trainings and short videos. So we tried to give like a buffet of training. So you kind of had to pick one. There's no way you could just say no. And then we also focused on department pre-calibrations at the start of the year, which is a practice I'm sure a lot of HR practitioners on this call have heard before, where you erase all names and you facilitate an open conversation on, let's say, a recruiter. What are the expectations for a level 3 recruiter? What does good look like? What does meets expectations look like? You don't talk about any people. You don't talk about any individual's performance. You just talk like table stakes, objectively, for a level 3 recruiter to get a 4 or a 3. What does it look like on the what? And then also, what does it look like on the how? Like how they show up, how they demonstrate our values, how they collaborate and support each other. So pre-calibration to me is like really critical, because you don't want to go into a calibration session, which in our wonderful 48-hour performance, you only have one day to do, and have there be this kind of real disconnect. So we spent a lot of time really prepping those. We over communicated about this. And not just the people team, which I think is really important. We had our executives communicate about it. We had Yacht deliver looms about it. We had a monthly all hands, which had a people spot and talked about it every time. We deliver content through our people newsletter. We have a people bot called Remy, and they deliver personalized content through Slack to each of our employees. So we did that. So we differentiated the content based on whether the individual was an individual contributor or a manager. And then one of the things that's really, really important, and we got really good feedback because we just sent out a survey last week, we introduced monthly performance check-ins. So my vision is that the tool is always open, calibration is always happening, there is no stopped performance, we're always managing it. So at the end of every month now, we send prompts via Remy, our internal people team Slack bot, and we ask managers to rate employee performance, just what was going on that month, what the score is. We ask them if they can to put 3 or 4 lines in. Just a bit of prep. Takes you 2 minutes, score 3 or 4 lines. And that feeds into a dynamic calibration curve in our platform that the leader can view at any time. And so our people partners would, at the end of the month, kind of bring up the curve, see how the manager feels about the curve. If there's like 20% 5s, you might go, what's happening over here? And the manager would lead that conversation and critically kind of, I guess, continuously aligning the management team on what good looks like, what great looks like for this organization. So that was also really important. And we had, in our survey last week, we got 70% of managers who responded, found that monthly performance checks helpful, somewhat helpful, very helpful. So it definitely happened. And we only did it for 2 months before the cycle. So next year, they'll have 6 months of doing it. And then the most important bit about putting in this feedback, and actually there's also an opportunity for the ICs to put in their feedback as well. We should always encourage that so that people aren't remembering what they did in January. We then, AI will then help them build their manager assessment and their individual self-reflection based on, I guess, what I call like the seeds that they have sown through the half in advance. So that again makes that day of reviews much easier. We also encouraged employees to give each other feedback and to request feedback. We gamified feedback. We had top feedback givers in our monthly newsletter. People could share feedback privately with the manager or openly. And now an AI obviously is woven completely through our tool, and that helps polish like tone or structure and kind of just helps them out, especially if like English mightn't be your native language. And then we normalized self-reflection throughout this year. So constantly talking about it, constantly logging, encourage people to log their wins and growth through like another Slack, what's it called, like Slack tooling, I guess, that they would put it into their own Slack and it would shoot into the HR platform and sit in your remote profile. So all this ongoing feedback from the manager, from yourself, from your peers to your peers.
Yeah. Wow. This is an astronomical like initiative. And I knew that, but it was still incredible to kind of hear you talk through that. A couple of things I think I wanted to emphasize for listeners is I've seen this personally, how key executive sponsorship and sort of championing of these initiatives are. And that's something that I imagine is critical to have Job and Marcelo and, the entire leadership team really advocate and kind of mitigate the skepticism that might come from employees around like, really, like, can you really do like a performance review in 48 hours or so? And the other thing that's super interesting to me is with these monthly check-ins, you eliminate sort of the recency bias behind the feedback, because now your managers are thinking about this across the period of time and not just, right after a launch or something significant happens, and you tend to orient your feedback around that. So I think that those are really powerful things. Diving really in, because we're going through this pretty quickly. What can you tell me about the actual sort of 2 days of the performance reviews? Sort of day 1, day 2, what was the scope of kind of the goals and activities there?
It was terrible. No. A lot of coffee. Okay. So my team were amazing. So, and I have to say the engineering team, for any bugs that were going to come up, they were online, they were ready to support. It was brilliant. So day 1 was reflections and submissions. So that is the moment that employees and managers could write their reviews from scratch. I think Angelo, I think was the name, asked through my LinkedIn how AI impacts the quality of the reviews. And we could use AI to generate your drafts. So of all the kind of seeds that you have sown through the platform, your notes from feedback, your one-to-one tooling, all of that stuff, AI kind of combed through all of that and delivered you either a self-assessment or a manager assessment. And how we framed the day was day 1 was read, tweak, submit. So the idea is that you're not doing all the writing. You're not spending a ton of time kind of laboriously starting from scratch. You're actually reading what's been delivered to you. You're tweaking it and you're submitting it. We talked a lot, and we had, again, different executives. Our CFO, Michiel, wrote as well to the company around using bullets instead of using kind of really verbose paragraphs. And, a lot of, they do it unprompted, the executive team. They're very focused on how people spend their time and making sure that they're doing everything the smartest way. So the built-in AI tool was like the starting draft, and then you could kind of edit to perfect. The self and manager reviews were due within 24 hours. And the information was kind of already there, and the process just helped make it usable. So 95% completion rate at the end of that day, which for 1,800 people is wild. I was not expecting that. I actually had already prepped my team. Frankly, I had said that it was going to be a SH show, and that the worse it is, it's kind of okay, because it will make the product team work harder, the engineering team work harder, it'll make execs sit up straight, it'll make leaders kind of, if they feel pain, they'll do better next time. But I was really, really surprised and proud, honestly, that all the kind of prep work from the team had really delivered this 95% completion rate. And then talking about AI and leveraging the AI, again, our survey last week gave us some insights. I just have to read them because I don't want to get the numbers wrong. From our survey last week, 91% of our respondents found the AI helpful, with 35% saying it was extremely helpful. 85%, considering this was our first 48-hour experience, 85% rated the overall experience good or very good, with 88% saying steps and the expectations were clear. 31% said they saved between 1 and 3 hours. 13% said they saved between 4 and 8 hours, and 3% said they're saving between 17 and 40 hours, which is wild. I actually need to check their span of control, but it's anonymous, so I can't. But that seems like a lot. So that was day one. And then day two, then we wrapped everything at like 7 p.m. UTC. And we then started to crunch all the data because we needed to have everything ready for calibration. So people were looking, at their curves, checking to see if there are any flags by managers or leaders about who they want to talk to during calibration. And the executive and the management teams calibrated on this day. What I think is really important is that the kind of the dynamic calibration curve that the leader had or had insight to and access to, he or she or they have been talking to their leaders about it at the end of every month. So everyone was very calibrated. And I think that's the really important piece in the puzzle, I guess. Everyone was very calibrated, and that enabled us to have really effective and efficient calibrations. It enabled us to have outcomes that were finalized the same day. And the remote perform the dashboard made it easy for us to spot gaps, align ratings, and make sure that we were kind of confirming readiness to proceed. So final review packs were submitted, signed off, the executive team signed off. They had no spreadsheets, no email chains, no delays. So from end to end, that was done 48 hours. We were good to go.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like everyone was on the same page. Basically, they knew exactly, they knew all the trigger points, they knew all the questions, and it sounds like they had the right sort of capacity and the tooling and sort of the information at hand to sort of work through that before the formality of sort of the day happened to sort of wrap up the process.
Yeah, it was great. And all the conversations are happening this week. So, it all happened very fast. Or last week, sorry, I was away.
Yeah, last week. This is happening real time. So, in terms of the impact, I'm actually just going to save you a little bit of bandwidth here and kind of maybe summarize what I heard from you. So 1,800 employees reviewed in 48 hours, review cycles that were typically like 6 to 8 weeks happened in 2 days.
Yeah.
Not magically, it was a continuous process, but sort of the wrap up was sort of in 2 days. 95% participation across the company in sort of a single day, and really accelerated turnaround on sort of promo and merit decisions across the board. To you, what stands out? I guess if you had to summarize 2 sentences, what kind of impact did this have? What is your sort of vision for this going forward?
Yeah, we are not done. I think performance management became something that people can think of as actionable and transparent. Continuous will be an ongoing muscle. I don't think we're ever done there, and I don't think I'll ever be done there, but it's hugely improved and we're continuing to move the needle. I'm really delighted that our tool and our platform performed at scale with 1,800 people in our very own business, which is just really exciting, and everyone was dogfooding and adding feedback, and it was brilliant. The ongoing monthly performance check-ins, I think, were really important, and that really gave our calibration meetings more clarity. And the dynamic calibration curve enabled the leader to kind of see what was coming, what any potential challenges were. And actually, sorry, I didn't say, but during these monthly performance flags, we could also ask, do you have a promotion trending? So we could kind of prep the promotion checks. So we would run checks around tenure, performance rating, all of that sort of thing. We could prep all that stuff in advance so that the promotions committee conversation was pretty immediate then that evening as well. So, and then the final one actually, so for me, growing up at Google, obviously data for us is key. So there was a beautiful dashboard that was created that helped surface trends for the HR team. And, about all of the different departments, all of the different organizations, teams, the different curves, everything that we see, and then obviously the company-wide one. And we'll be able to see that in the platform, obviously, when we start to conduct our next monthly performance trends, which is in August, just around the corner. What you mean?
Wow.
Performance is ongoing.
Never sleeps. Got it. Okay. Well, with that said, I am actually going to surface some Q&A that came up through the course of, the last week on the backs of the announcement and throughout. So first one, and this is my favorite, I'm curious. Karine wonders, is there a Guinness Book of Records entry for this? Like, is this a record as far as you know?
So I ran down the stairs after the first day. I was like, 95% completion, blah, blah, blah. My kids looked up from their beans on toast because that's all they were fed that night because I was working hard. And they just went back to their beans. And my husband, who's a lawyer, was like, oh, that sounds great, baby. Just no interest. So I think there should be a Guinness Book Award, but not in my household, unfortunately.
Got it. We will have to chase this down. How did you, for Amanda, how did you accommodate things like people being on leave or absent for any period of time?
Yeah, that was actually really important because that tended to be a reason that people always had for leaving it so open for so long, the platform. So again, performance is already always open. There was a clear understanding of the questions needed for the review. And going forward, obviously, it'll always be open so that people will be always able to answer their questions at any point. And the data can go in on an ongoing basis. Again, like it's a muscle shift, it's a culture shift, but that is kind of the overarching or the end vision. And for this particular moment, we had shared out questions on a document to let people know in advance kind of what the questions were so that because it's really important that their voices heard, obviously, through the process.
Makes total sense. I think there were a few people asking around the product capabilities and the product sort of feature set that supported this experience. And I can actually chime in there, which is in addition to everything that Barbara just said, the fundamental sort of belief behind the tool is that the tool is open, it is flexible, and it is an ongoing process. So the key product features that sort of supported this conversation are the concept of product snapshots, so things that enable the monthly check-ins for managers and for teammates to stay on top of that ongoing conversation. The notion of evergreen feedback, so supporting giving, receiving feedback across the platform and within going to the employees, like in Slack, to sort of access feedback points versus, having this be a formal place of entry in the tool itself. And then, of course, a lot of the process and tooling are in calibration itself. So to sort of showcase the calibration process and the curves that would go into sort of input there. But we can share more as part of a product demo and a video in follow-up to this conversation.
Yeah, and you can also go on to remote.com /form and book a demo.
Yes. There was one more question around, Laura asked about just wanting to learn a little bit more about the communication and change management efforts that supported this. I know you talked a little bit about that, but anything additional you can share?
I think just it takes time. And one of the most important things to make the change happen is leadership buy-in and executive alignment, for sure. And then constantly reiterating the message and the vision so that nobody can say that they weren't informed and nobody doesn't know. And then I think one of the things actually that I liked and that I've had more of since I've come to remote is having different versions and types of training, which is so important because I don't know if I should say this, it's cheeky plastic. I hate attending like in real life training where they make me go and role model somewhere, but loads of people love that. So being able to have different types and lengths, there's really nice kind of bite-sized trainings that we had, really nice videos that we had huddles, we had sync training, async training, and having like a real plethora of choice for your employees is going to actually make them more inclined to make the time to do it, especially if it suits whatever way they like to learn.
Yeah. Final question, and you've been so gracious. What is the biggest takeaway or message you would share to your peers? So other HR leaders that are contemplating, accelerating or running a performance cycle that in whatever way or shape or form is right for them, not necessarily 48 hours, but they want to take this leap to do it different.
I think the key thing is preparation. Figuring out what you want to do, where you want to go, and walking back from that. Ongoing communication. It is not, this was not, I mean, I've explained it, but it was not an overnight win. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of sweat and time, and changing a culture takes all of that and buy-in and support. People mightn't like the way the culture evolves and all of those things that you are challenged with. So just make sure you build in the time that it takes to make that change. And we're not done, as I said. I think we're going to keep going. It's not about speeding things up just to move fast either. It's about developing the vision of whatever you as the leader want with performance. However, whatever your performance philosophy is, whatever your approach is, I would really focus on trying to remove the noise and surface what matters for you so that you can move forward kind of with clarity, with transparency. We had the data, I had what was in my head, we were building the habits. My team supported me in bringing this like vision to life, and Remote perform as a product, and the engineering and product teams really gave us the scaffolding. So I think, I don't know, hopefully that helps.
That sounds great. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. As a hyper quick recap, this wasn't about speeding up performance reviews, as Barbara just said. It was about redesigning the entire process so that there was clarity, alignment, and impact. It was certainly a culture shift and then a process shift. And certainly, things enable this within the tool, but fundamentally it is about culture and process that the tool sort of supports. And then at the end of the day, we were able to move really fast to do a global performance review, which I think is still the first of a kind for 1,800 people. If you're curious about the product, reach out to us. We're glad to chat. And then we'll send some more follow-up links and resources. Thanks again.
Thank you.